In this video, we'll take a brief look at the advanced settings available when you configure a new or existing Wi-Fi network in the RUCKUS One network management platform. Please note that this is a how-to video and not a why-to video, meaning it's not intended to provide deep dive information on every setting. Visit the ruckusnetworks.com website to find training curricula as well as access to Ruckus technical family content, which also includes best practices and deployment guides. Whether you took advantage of the RUCKUS One default configuration settings during network creation, or you need to modify settings to improve the user experience, RUCKUS One makes it easy to reconfigure your network's advanced settings. You can configure the advanced options while creating a new network or modifying an existing one. While adding a new wireless network on RUCKUS One, you must name it and choose a network type. Once these basic details are filled, you proceed to the Settings page. On the Settings page, click on Show More Settings to access the advanced options. Note that depending on the network type, the advanced settings will be located on either a settings or on an onboarding page, but will always be an expandable section labeled as Show More Settings. To configure advanced options on an existing network, navigate to the Wi-Fi Networks list page, select a network, and click Edit. Click the Next button to advance through the wizard until you land on the More Settings page. RUCKUS One offers a range of additional options that give you a high degree of control over the way the network functions. These options include VLAN or virtual LANs configuration, enabling network services, and radio settings configuration. Also note that options vary from network to network. For example, only captive portal networks include user connection options. Under the VLAN option, you can assign a VLAN ID to this network. By default, VLAN ID is set to 1, but you can choose any VLAN ID between 1 to 4094. Let's change it to 10. So now any client accessing the network will be added on VLAN 10. You can also add a VLAN pool on this network by toggling the VLAN pooling option. This is useful in high-density deployments where you have a lot of clients. Once you activate it, you can choose an existing VLAN pool profile from the drop-down list, or add a new one by clicking the Add Pool option. Since we don't have any profiles configured, let's add one. Let's name the pool profile as Pool 1 and add the VLAN IDs to it. Now you can add VLAN IDs between 2 to 4094. Let's go ahead and add VLAN ID range from 100 to 163. Note that RUCKUS One allows up to 64 VLAN IDs to be defined for a single profile. As you can see here, it does not allow us to add more than 64. So let's keep it to 163 and click Finish. Now, all the clients connecting to this network will be mapped to the VLAN IDs between 100 to 163. Proxy ARP allows the access point to act as a proxy for ARP requests from the client. RUCKUS One allows you to manage network services such as DNS proxy, Wi-Fi calling, client isolation, and anti-spoofing. Enabling DNS proxy allows the APs to respond to DNS queries with a custom IP address. Let's go ahead and enable DNS proxy. As soon as you enable it, you'll be asked to configure a DNS proxy rule. So click Add Rule. For the domain name, we'll enter ruckuswireless.com. And for the IP address, let's enter 104.22.53.115 and click Add. Note that you can add more than one IP address as well. For now, let's just keep it to one IP address and click Save. As you can see, the new rule has been added here. You can also add more than one rule if required. Click OK to enable the DNS proxy. Next, let's look at the benefits of enabling Wi-Fi calling on your network. Configuring Wi-Fi calling enables the network to auto-detect and prioritize the voice traffic over other network data traffic. Note that before enabling the Wi-Fi calling option, one or more Wi-Fi calling profiles must already exist in the My Services portion of RUCKUS One. Let's enable Wi-Fi calling. We must select one or more profiles to activate on this network. From the list of available profiles, we'll select one and add it to the selected profiles list. Then click Save. Only the selected profiles will be supported by the Wi-Fi calling feature in this network. By enabling the client isolation feature, you can make sure that devices connected to this network are blocked from communicating with each other on the network. As soon as you enable it, you'll be asked to specify the type of data packets that need to be isolated on the network. You can specify the network to isolate unicast data, multicast data, or both. If you wish to increase redundancy of your network, enable the VRRP HSRP protocols. By enabling the Client Isolation Allow List by Venue option, you can limit the types of clients that can connect to the network. Once you enable it, you can see the list of venues on which the network is currently active. In our case, it's active on 2 different venues. Let's go ahead and choose Only iPhone Allow List for our first venue and Only Windows Allow List for our second venue. As the profile name suggests, only iPhones can connect to your network in the first venue, and only Windows devices can connect in the second venue. Note that before enabling the Client Isolation Allow List by Venue option, one or more client isolation profiles must already exist in the Client Isolation Policy portion of RUCKUS One. The anti-spoofing option prevents attacks on genuine clients on the network from rogue clients. When anti-spoofing is enabled, ARP and DHCP request rate limits are enabled by default. And if you don't want to limit one or both request rates at all, you can disable these 2 options as well. And finally, under the Services options, you can opt to send the system logs to a third-party server. Next, let's look at the types of radio settings that can be customized on your network. You can hide the network ID by enabling the Hide SSID option. RUCKUS One also provides the ability to control the client load on your network. Load control can be managed by customizing the maximum bandwidth allocated to each client. The default option is unlimited, which means there's no limit on the bandwidth allocation for devices on the network. If you choose the Per AP option, you can further customize the upload and download limits of all connections to this specific network. You can also set the maximum number of clients per radio. By default, it's set to 126, but it's modifiable using the slide selector. And enabled by default, load balancing between radios ensures that the client traffic is distributed across all available radio bands. Also enabled by default, load balancing between APs ensures that client traffic is distributed across nearby APs in the network that are underutilized. Let's keep the default values for now and move on to configuring access control settings. With RUCKUS One, you can configure the access control list in 2 ways. One way is to configure a single access control profile for the entire Wi-Fi network. Or you can configure each access policy individually based on your network requirements. To configure a single access control profile, click on Select Access Control Profile and toggle the Access Control option. From the policy drop-down list, select a profile. Once you choose a profile, you can see the changes in the access policy and policy details column. If you choose a different profile, you can see the corresponding values change as well. As mentioned earlier, you can also configure these access control profiles individually. Click on Select Separate Profiles options. You can select all these policies, or you can choose to configure any one of them. Once you toggle on each option, a drop-down list will appear. Either you can choose an existing profile for each of these policies or add a new profile. For now, let's select from the available profiles. If you enable the client rate limit option, notice that the upload and download limit options are defaulted to unlimited. However, once you click the upload and download limit tick boxes, They default to 20 megabits per second and are modifiable. Let's keep the upload limit to 5 and the download limit to 20 for this network. The Enable OFDM only option is enabled by default, making sure all 802.11b clients are blocked from connecting to the network. The BSS min rate and management transmission rate is used to set the minimum transmission rate for data frames and management frames. Since OFDM is enabled, the transmission rate data frames can be either 12 or 24 megabits per second. Transmission rate for management frames will be fixed at 6 megabits per second. Along with OFDM, 802.11k neighbor reports is enabled by default. 802.11k neighbor reports enhances the roaming experience for clients by providing a list of neighbor APs to the client upon request. As the name implies, the client inactivity timeout can be used to disconnect the client from the network if it's inactive for more than the specified time interval. Directed MCBC threshold is used to set the per radio client count at which an AP stops converting multicast and broadcast data traffic to unicast. RUCKUS does not recommend increasing the default setting above 5 as it can negatively impact performance of the APs. Setting this field to 0 effectively disables directed multicast. The airtime decongestion feature optimizes the Wi-Fi management traffic in a network where the amount of management traffic consumes a significant portion of airtime. Note that this feature also controls the RSSI threshold setting. So, enabling airtime decongestion eliminates the Join RSSI threshold option in the UI. By enabling Join RSSI threshold, you can manually set the minimum signal strength that clients must meet in order to join the network. Once you enable the transient client management option, you can set parameters that define the client wait time before joining, expire time, and the wait threshold. Let's disable transient client management for now. Optimized Connectivity Experience, or OCE, delivers a better overall connectivity experience by delaying probe responses on the network and by blocking devices with lower RSSI value. Let's keep the default value and click Next. Select the venues on which your network needs to be activated. Let's toggle the Activated button on both RUCKUS Lab R1 and RUCKUS Lyle IL venues. And now we click Finish to apply the changes. And that's it. All the additional configurations will be applied to your network. That brings us to the end of this video on configuring the advanced settings for a Wi-Fi network in the RUCKUS One network management platform.